It was an apparently calm day in Greenville, a city known for its serenity and predictable routine, but that peace was unexpectedly shaken on a sunny afternoon when the piercing sound of sirens echoed through the streets. The residents, accustomed to the tranquility, were drawn to their windows, curious and concerned. Police vehicles sped through the neighborhood, racing past meticulously aligned houses until they came to a sudden halt in front of Shaquille O'Neal's luxurious mansion. The neighbors whispered among themselves, trying to figure out what could be happening. Some were glued to their windows while others ventured outside, pretending to be casually in their gardens but clearly interested in the unfolding events. The confusion grew when 4 police officers got out of their cars and headed straight to the front door. One of the officers knocked firmly, his voice echoing as he demanded, "Mr. O'Neal, we have a search warrant. Please, step out of the residence." Moments later, the imposing figure of Shaquille O'Neal appeared. With his monumental physique and presence that commanded respect, he calmly opened the door. His deep voice greeted the officers courteously as he stepped aside to let them in. The neighbors watched in astonishment. The scene, although dramatic, was not a complete surprise to everyone. Some had already noticed strange goings-on at Shaq's property in recent weeks. Rumors had been circulating among the residents about nighttime activities at the mansion. Every night, exactly at midnight, large trucks arrived at the property, carrying something mysterious. The workers, always wearing gloves and masks, unloaded the vehicles quickly and precisely, as if they were racing against time. No one knew for sure what was being transported, but the regularity and secrecy surrounding the deliveries left the community uneasy. Additionally, even more curious events began to occur during the day. Once a week, smaller vehicles arrived at the property carrying large containers. The workers, just as methodical as at night, moved the containers inside the house and, within minutes, returned with them visibly heavier. The neighbors watched everything but remained silent, torn between curiosity and respect for the star's privacy. However, the silence began to break when mysterious flashes of light started coming from the house in the early hours of the morning. The intensity of the lights was enough to be noticed by the neighboring homes, and the regularity with which they appeared only increased the community's discomfort. As if that weren't enough, a strange odor began to spread through the neighborhood. The smell, described by some as something chemical and unpleasant, seemed to emanate from Shaq's property, although no one could confirm it for certain. That was when the community's patience reached its limit. Led by Miss Janice, an influential and determined figure in the neighborhood, the residents decided to take action. Janice, a woman of imposing bearing and known for her interest in other people's affairs, could not contain her distrust of what was happening at the mansion. She had spent nights silently observing the property, trying to discover what Shaq was hiding, but without success. To her, it was clear that something sinister was going on. A meeting was convened among the residents, and after hours of discussion, they decided to form a delegation to approach the NBA star directly. The next morning, a group of respected figures from the neighborhood went to Shaq's mansion. They were nervous but determined. When Shaq opened the door, his impressive presence did not intimidate the group, which quickly explained their concerns. "Mr. O'Neal," Janice began in a serious tone, "we've noticed some unusual things happening at your residence. The other residents are increasingly worried, and we believe it would be important to clarify a few doubts." Shaq listened attentively, without interrupting. When she finished, he replied calmly, his deep tone reassuring. "I understand your concerns and I apologize for any inconvenience, but I assure you there is nothing wrong going on here. Please, trust me." Although his words were polite, they were not enough to convince Janice. To her, Shaq's explanation was too vague. Determined to uncover the truth, she decided to step up her vigilance. For weeks, Janice kept a close eye on the property, noting every movement, until one night, something unexpected happened. She heard raised voices coming from outside the mansion. Intrigued, she left her house to watch more closely. From a distance, she could make out 2 figures in a heated argument. Although most of the conversation was out of earshot, one specific phrase caught her attention. "The boss won't like this. You had specific instructions." Janice's mind began working at top speed. Who was the boss, and what were those instructions about? She returned to her home determined to use this new information to pressure Shaq. The next morning, armed with her usual determination, she waited for him during his morning run. When Shaq finally appeared, she ran alongside him with no ceremony. "I know you're hiding something," she said, her voice dripping with suspicion, "and I'm going to find out what it is, whether you want me to or not." Shaq stopped and looked at her, his expression unshaken. "You're right," he responded, surprisingly. "I am hiding something, and I promise that soon you'll know what it is." The silence in Shaquille O'Neal's reply left Janice perplexed. What did he mean by, "soon you'll know what it is"? For someone like her, used to delving deep into anything that intrigued her, this answer was a provocation. But at the same time, it left her in a dilemma. Wait patiently or take action. And for Janice, waiting was never an option. The following days were marked by growing tension in the neighborhood. The rumors fueled by Janice took on a life of their own. Some neighbors believed that Shaq was involved in something dangerous, while others continued to defend his impeccable reputation. Nevertheless, the atmosphere of distrust grew with every new detail noticed. One night, while most residents were already asleep, Janice saw something that seemed to confirm her suspicions. It was midnight when a truck larger than usual arrived at the mansion. Unlike the other vehicles, this one seemed heavily guarded. Two men got out of the truck, both carrying weapons discreetly concealed under their jackets. Janice, hidden behind a nearby fence, watched every movement, her heart pounding. This time, she knew she needed concrete proof to confront Shaq. She used her cell phone to take pictures of the truck and the men, but the result was disappointing. The darkness and distance made the images unclear. Even so, she did not give up. She decided it was time to call for reinforcements. The next day, she sought out a friend in the local police, Officer Martinez, someone known for his impeccable ethics and patience, essential qualities for dealing with Janice. "Martinez," she began, showing the images on her phone, "I know they don't look like much, but something is happening in that house. We need to investigate before it's too late." Martinez looked at the photos and, though skeptical, decided to take the case further. He knew Janice had a tendency to exaggerate, but he also recognized that sometimes her suspicions had led to real discoveries. After a brief conversation with his superiors, Martinez obtained a search warrant. It was all Janice needed to finally reveal what she believed to be the truth. The following night, Janice could barely contain her anxiety. Outside, she saw when the police cars arrived at the mansion. Once again, the sound of sirens cut through the night silence, drawing everyone's attention. This time, however, Janice did not just watch from afar. She followed the officers to the entrance of the house, her heart racing with anticipation of what was to come. Shaquille O'Neal appeared at the door as before, calm and polite. "Officers, you are welcome to search wherever you like," he said, motioning them inside. His nonchalant demeanor confused Janice. If he was really hiding something, how could he seem so unruffled? The police began to search the property, while Janice, filled with determination, stayed close to the group. After searching the upper floors and the ground floor without finding anything unusual, they turned their attention to the basement. It was there, in the subterranean space, that many believed Shaq's secret could be hidden. The entrance to the basement was a heavy door in the corner of the house, almost imperceptible if not for Shaq's guidance. He calmly led them there and opened the door. A steep staircase descended to the space below, and a peculiar odor began to spread in the air. Janice wrinkled her nose as she descended, her determination fighting the slight nausea caused by the smell. What they found in the basement was completely unexpected. Under Shaquille O'Neal's mansion, there was a carefully constructed underground tunnel. In the center of the tunnel, there was a huge tank filled with crystal-clear water, where dozens of fish swam gracefully under the light of powerful LEDs installed on the walls. The lights emitted an intense glow, the same that had intrigued neighbors for weeks. The police looked around, confused. One of them asked, "What exactly is this, Mr. O'Neal?" Shaq, as calm as ever, began to explain. "When I moved here, I discovered this abandoned tunnel under the property. Instead of ignoring it, I decided to turn it into something useful. This fish tank is part of a project to provide fresh food to the city's homeless shelters. I prefer not to make a fuss about it because the focus shouldn't be on me, but on the people who really need help." Silence fell over the group. Janice, who until that moment had harbored so many suspicions, felt her face flush. Her mind tried to process Shaq's words, but it was clear that everything made sense. The nighttime deliveries, the mysterious containers, the peculiar smell. Everything was connected to this altruistic project. Shaq continued, "The trucks come to pick up the fish at night so they arrive fresh at the shelters in the morning. I know my desire for privacy caused concerns, but my goal has always been to help without attracting attention." The police began to relax, realizing there was nothing illegal going on. Martinez, who was accompanying the group, turned to Janice, waiting for her to say something. However, she remained silent, consumed by a mixture of shame and admiration. As the officers left, satisfied with Shaq's explanations and the documentation he presented, Janice stayed behind in the tunnel, looking at the fish tank. Finally, she gathered the courage to speak. I'm sorry for doubting you. I guess I went too far." Shaq gave a small smile. "I understand, Miss Janice. You were just worried about your community, but I'm glad everything is clear now." That night, as Janice returned home, she reflected on her actions and her outlook on life. For the first time in a long while, she realized she might have been too quick to judge. More than that, Shaq's generosity touched something within her, planting a seed of change. The next day, Janice visited Shaq again. He invited her to accompany a delivery to the homeless shelter. There she saw the grateful faces of people receiving meals. The impact was transformative. Inspired, Janice began volunteering at the shelter and helped with new community initiatives. The old mistrust was replaced by a new purpose. Shaq and Janice, once distant neighbors, became partners in actions that made a difference in Greenville. An important lesson remained. Sometimes we judge too much before understanding, and often the quietest actions carry the greatest acts of generosity.